Hello, everyone. And thank you so much for choosing to spend your Saturday evening with me. I really appreciate it. Or it could be your Sunday morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. I would like to say a quick thank you to my moderators for keeping the chat classy as always. I love your comments and I love you guys in the chat, but please be respectful and kind to each other, or they may put you in timeout or block you, and you don't want that to happen. I love reading your comments after the broadcast. So thank you also to all the replay viewers. And I like to read the comments and respond to them. And I love this little community that we're building. I think it's really great. So thank you for coming in on a Saturday night. Also, thank you to all my subscribers. And if you are not yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button below. What are you waiting for? It's free. And hit the bell too, so you get notified every time I go live or upload a new video. Hello, Miss Donna Marie. Good to see you. Patroness Glow. Richie Grows. That's a new name. I haven't seen you in here. Tom Cusinelli. How are you tonight? Retired Irish detective. Hello. Hi, Curious Kiwi from New Zealand. What time is it in New Zealand? It's got to be the middle of the night there, no? Donna Shaw, good evening from New Hampshire. Two of my children are at sleepaway camp in New Hampshire. So hi to all the girls who are able to have their phones for one day today. And if you're watching me, big shout out to the girls on Lake Winnipesaukee, let's say. You know who you are. Barbara George, hello. Mystique, how are you? Aunt BB2, always good to see you. Hi, Rochella, nice to see you. And a quick shout out also to Peter Pranzo, who sent me a copy of his book, and I got it in the mail today. And I'm going to hold it up for you. It's called Harlem Raiders, and it's an excellent book. I just started it today, sitting outside by the pool, and it's great. I'm going to link a description for you to buy this book in the description of this video. And also a big shout out to one of my subscribers, Cami, who was so kind. She's a social media maven. And she came on Zoom with me today and helped me work out some of my StreamYard issues. So I'm hoping that everything's going to run smoothly today. Thank you, Cami. I'm also going to link her channel below so you can check out her videos on social media marketing. And she also wrote a book for business marketing. So if any of you guys are interested in that, I will link that below as well. Okay. Do we have anybody in the chat from Long Island? If you're in the chat from Long Island, please do just like a hashtag Long Island. Let me know where you're from. This is a very personal case to those of us who live on Long Island. I was born and raised here. And when these body parts started washing up on our beaches, in 1996, it was, disturbing, to say the least. Hey, Ravi. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Appreciate that. Thanks for loving my channel. I love you too. Hello in Australia. So 1996, I was a young mother. I already had a baby at that time. Actually, two babies. Okay, so I had two children, two very young children at that time. And these legs washed up on the beach in Fire Island. So she's been known as Jane Doe number 7 since 1996. And we just found out yesterday that she was finally identified. So I'm going to play a little clip for you of the press conference. I know most of you have probably already seen it. Okay, so Darlene Wolf is from Suffolk County, now in Florida. Hello, Scott. I think Scott's from Long Island. I think Rochella and Pete are from Long Island as well. I don't want to dox anybody, so if you don't want anybody to know where you are, you don't have to tell me. But this is a very personal case for us, and I'm just going to leave it at that for now. So I'm going to play for you a little clip of DA Ray Tierney's press conference where he announced the identity of Jane Doe number 7. And here we go.
We are here to announce that as part of the Gilgo Task Force re-examination of all the evidence in the case, we were able to identify Fire Island Jane Doe as Karen VERGATA, who was 34 years old at the time of her disappearance. And I believe we have a picture of Miss VERGATA. I think it's important that we remember and honor not only Miss VERGATA, but all the victims on Gilgo Beach.
Okay, one thing that I want to say is I'm a little bit upset that this is the only picture that they could get of Karen VERGATA. She was 34 years old when she went missing, and this looks to me like an elementary school photo, which is sad to me. And I'm going to tell you her life story or what I know of it after we listen to this press conference.
Ms. VERGATA went missing at approximately February 14th, 1996. At the time, she lived on West 45th Street in Manhattan and was believed to be working as an escort at the time of her disappearance. There was no missing persons complaint filed at the time of that disappearance.
Nobody ever reported her missing. So sad.
In August of 2022, approximately 6 months after we formed this Gilgo task force, a DNA profile suitable for genealogical comparison was developed from the remains of Karen VERGATA. In September of 2022, the FBI was able via a genetic genealogy review to identify Ms. VERGATA presumptively as Fire Island Jane Doe. Thereafter, in October of 2022, using a buccal swab from a relative of Karen VERGATA, we were able to definitively identify her.
Okay, so she was definitively identified in October of 2022. Karen VERGATA was a 34-year-old woman from New York City. She called her family for the last time on February 14th, Valentine's Day of 1996. That day she disappeared. She was believed to have been working as an escort, but a missing persons report was never filed. Around 10 weeks later, on April 20th of 1996, a pair of legs were found in a black trash bag near Davis Park on Fire Island. So for those of you who are from here or who are not from here, Fire Island is located off the south shore of Long Island, eastern Suffolk County, kind of before you get to the Hamptons. If you go all the way east, you get to the Hamptons and then Montauk. A bit before that, south of Robert Moses Beach, is an island called Fire Island. You have to get there by ferry. There are no cars allowed. And it's a lovely bucolic island that is mostly summer oriented, but there are a lot of people who live there year round. It's a very, very tiny year round population, but I think they even do have schools on Fire Island. But you have to take a ferry to get there. So her legs were found 10 weeks after she disappeared, we now know. Then on April 11th of 2011, 15 years later, Karen's skull was found on Ocean Parkway on Toe Bay Beach, which is not far from where the Gilgo 4 were found. That same day, another Jane Doe, who has come to be known as Peaches, was also found. In 2017, Karen's father, Dominic, filed a petition to have her declared dead in order to gain control over any unclaimed assets of his daughter. Apparently, the family had hired a private investigator to try and find her, and the family had given DNA samples that eventually led to her identification in what Tierney just said was October of 2022. Her identity was not released to the public until yesterday, August 4th of 2023. So this is kind of sad. While Ray Tierney, the district attorney, said in his press conference that Karen's family had been notified, it turns out that her father, Dominic, passed away in December of 2022. I saw an article and I tried to reach out to him. And then I found another article after I tried to reach out to him that he died in December. So I don't know if he was notified prior to his death that they had identified his daughter, which is really heartbreaking to me if he died not knowing that they had identified her when they had this information since October. Also, it turns out, I saw an article that Karen had 2 biological children, and they were adopted at the ages of 2 and 4 in 1992. Her son, Eric, who is now 32 years old, was reached by a reporter after the press conference, and he was floored by this news. He had not been notified. So I'm not sure who the DA notified, but this poor kid, who's not a kid, he's 32 years old, has lived his entire life with his adoptive family. He knew that he was adopted, and he just thought his mom just disappeared and just never came back for him, which is really also kind of sad. If you know anybody who's adopted, or if you are adopted, a lot of adoptees do try at some point to find their biological families. And my heart really kind of breaks for him, because his whole life he just thought his mom took off and didn't care and didn't want to reach back out. And I think that's kind of heartbreaking. The older son has cerebral palsy and is in a state facility. There was some news reported that when she was pregnant with him, she may have been involved in a bad car accident that may have caused his disabilities. So it's just a sad story all around. I did try and reach out to Eric, the son, and his girlfriend, who also gave an interview, and I wasn't able to reach either one of them before tonight, because I said that we were going to have, a tribute to Karen, and if there was anything that they wanted to add or tell us about her, that we would like to know, and that we would like to, pay our respects to her. So sad. So people are asking in the chat how far Gilgo is from, I missed it, from Fire Island. It's not far south. I think we're gonna come upon a map up here. So my question is, what are the odds, and you tell me what you think, that Heuermann is also responsible for what we're going to call these Manorville butcher cases? So there were a number of dismembered bodies that were found around 1996, before the Gilgo 4 were found in 2010. So since this is my channel, I can talk whatever I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. I think, and I have heard that, thank you for the super sticker, Robbie. Oh, you're just so generous tonight. Serial killers do change their MO. Some people are of the opinion that they never change their MO, they never change their signature, and that the Manorville butcher cases couldn't possibly be traced back to Heuermann because he didn't dismember the Gilgo 4. I kind of disagree with that, and I'm going to tell you why. But before I tell you why, let's look at what Rodney Harrison, the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, had to say about identifying Karen's remains, because I kind of think that I feel like Rodney Harrison should be the head of this investigation, or at least the face of this investigation. That's the way I kind of feel. I feel that he's very well spoken, and I feel that, it's his guys who kind of did all the work. Anybody who's law enforcement in the chat, could you give me a hashtag law enforcement? And if you are a armchair detective like me, can you give me a hashtag armchair detective? I think that's why so many of us love true crime so much, because we really kind of want to solve these things. So let's see what the police chief has to say about this. He was on Cuomo last night. I cut out Cuomo's part, and I'm just going to play what Rodney has to say. The question to Rodney that Cuomo asked him was, do you think that Heuermann could be connected to VERGATA? And here's what he had to say.
Yeah, Chris, so time will tell. In 1996, Miss VERGATA was, I believe, 34 years old. I'm not sure about my math, but I believe Rex Heuermann was about either 31 or 32. I'm not sure if he was into engaging with sex workers at that time, and Did he have anything regarding the disappearance?
I don't know. Just a guess, but I think he probably did have some involvement with sex workers or escorts during that time as well when he was younger. But, that's just me.
Ms. VERGATA. But I will say this, we do have him connected to what I call the Gilgo 4. And we definitely have it for 3 of them. We're definitely going to look to attach him to the 4th one and anything else that might have been discovered over on Ocean Parkway.
Okay, so he sounds hopeful that he might connect him to anything else discovered over on Ocean Parkway. And he sounds pretty confident that they will be able to indict him on the 4th of the Gilgo 4, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, who disappeared in 2007. She was the earliest victim. Again, here's this picture of Karen VERGATA, and it definitely looks like, I think, a junior high or a high school photo. Makes me sad.
If we could connect him to Mr. Heuermann, we're going to do as such, but it's an ongoing investigation. I'm just in a blessed place to have the right people to be part of the task force, and we're going to continue to work hard to identify if there's other suspects involved, is there another suspect, is there another serial killer, or if it's all connected to Mr. Heuermann.
Well, look, it's nice. You deserve to get positive attention when you're doing the job and closing cases that matter to your community and maybe beyond. So good for you for doing the job. Respect it. Now, will you explain to the audience why it's not automatic that now that Heuermann is arrested in New York, that you can get a DNA swab as you can in some other states? What is the law, and do you believe you'll be able to get the swab?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have to wait for a conviction on Mr. Heuermann before we could put his DNA in that database. That's going to, of course, open up a lot of windows towards other investigations, not just in the state of New York, but throughout the country. Remember, he had a timeshare in Las Vegas. We don't believe it's connected to anything in Atlantic City, but we're not ruling that out. And anywhere else. Listen.
Okay, so there's a big difference between New York and a lot of other states. A lot of other states will allow a suspect's DNA to go into CODIS, which is the national database for DNA, upon arrest. New York requires a conviction. Many states only require an arrest.
Mr. Heuermann had lived a double life. I've said this quite a couple times in the past, where he was a family man during the day, but a monster at night. And this is something that we'll continue to track down and see if he's involved in other deaths anywhere throughout the country. It's an ongoing investigation, Chris.
Kind of makes me think that he's got something in Las Vegas. He's just not saying it yet. He's holding his cards close to the vest, but he seems pretty confident about Las Vegas, at least. Let me know your thoughts.
Understood, Commissioner. One more question. Just to close the door on this, is there any suspicion or connection of Heuermann's wife to the case?
Okay, this is interesting. Listen up. Any connection to Heuermann's wife? And remember, this interview was done yesterday.
Yeah, at this time, we don't believe that's the case. A lot of his activities that he was involved in, she was out of town. I will say that there was
a lot of the activities, he was out of town. Can't they use the DNA they got already and put it in CODIS? Nope, they can't. Not until there's a conviction in New York. But there's a motion pending, and I'm going to go into that right after this. So he said most of the time she was out of the country or out of town.
Some evidence that came back that I can't share at this time that connected some of her DNA to parts of some of the bodies that were discovered. So we're not ruling her out, but at this time we don't believe that there's anything that's connecting or anything that we think that we believe that she was knowledgeable about her husband's actions.
Okay, so then the door stays open. Commissioner Harrison, thank you very much.
So the door stays open. I found that very interesting because we already know from the bail application that her hairs were found on 3 of the victims. That's not new information. That's public. That's out there. We already know about that. So what is he holding back that we don't know about? Let me know what you think. Thank you, Ed Timmons. Never been a true crime fan before until now. You and Duty Ron and Off the Cup have me hooked. Really enjoy the live chats. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Appreciate you. Yeah, so Duty Ron and Bill are on vacation this weekend. So you guys are stuck with just me. Just me. Oh, wow. Thank you. Bree Church for the $20 super chat. Oh, hello from Iowa. Obsessed with this case. Thank you. Thank you so much. Iowa's supposed to be a beautiful place. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love that. Okay, so Fremont Pathfinder says, I think they've probably already connected him to more, but aren't saying right now. I think that you are correct. They're holding it close to the vest. And Elisa Steinberg says, I think it was all Heuermann. He just changed his MO for murdering these poor women. Yeah, that's what I think too. Like maybe the dismembering just got to be too much, or maybe he decided, they're not finding these bodies anyway that I'm dismembering. So what's the point of me going through all this work? It is very difficult to dismember a body, I would think. I've never done it before, but I would imagine that it takes great strength. And I've seen Dexter do it. He also used black garbage bags too, by the way, Dexter. I know that people hate when we compare things to TV, but that's what a lot of us can relate to. A lot of us can relate to Dexter and seeing that kind of thing, and CSI. And yeah, it's not like that in real life, but at least we have some sort of knowledge of what kind of goes on in cases like that. Oh, thank you, Annika, for your super sticker. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Okay, so my theories have been validated by some experts. I'm going to play that for you. I always said, as a lawyer, when you want something from the court, you have to make a motion. And when you make a motion, you have to find cases that support your position. And I used to say, oh, there's always a case. There's always a case. Whatever you need to prove, whatever you want to say your argument is, there's always a case. Well, not in the case of the two lawyers that just got busted using chat GPT to write a brief for court. Did anybody hear about that case? And they're from Long Island too. They used chat GPT to write a brief in federal court, which is super, super, super strict. And chat GPT made up these cases that didn't even exist. And then they got called out on it by the other side, and they doubled down and said, oh no, these are real cases. It turned out they were made up cases that chat GPT just made up. So pro tip, don't use chat GPT to do your legal research, because you will become the poster lawyers for bad lawyering. That's embarrassing. They were from New York. Crazy. Thank you, Tony, for the $200 in a different denomination super sticker. Nice as usual. Sorry, I think Jane Doe 7 looks like a man, or is the picture fake? No, I don't think that you're looking at the right picture. She's got ponytails. I don't know. Thank you, Tony. Thanks. All right, so that was my suspicion. My suspicion was that maybe he changed his MO. So we are first going to hear Elizabeth Vargas interviewed a famous retired FBI profiler by the name of Mary Ellen O'Toole. And I want to show you what she had to say. There's always a case, and there's always someone to support your position. Okay, here's actually, this is a good graphic. This is a good graphic of all the victims. Okay, so he's charged with, so far, Melissa Barthelemy, Amberlynn Costello, and Megan Waterman. Maureen Brainerd Barnes is the fourth of the Gilgo four. He's not charged with her yet, but we are expecting an indictment soon. The grand jury's in progress, and I think they're going to hand that down soon. We actually thought that was going to come out yesterday during this press conference, but it did not. Then we have Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack, who were also only recently identified, and they also were dismembered. We have Peaches, whose remains were found the same day as Karen's skull, and the female toddler who was later connected to be the daughter of Peaches. They called her Peaches because the tattoo was the only thing that they had to identify her. And to my knowledge, she still has not been identified. There's also an Asian male that was found who was dressed in women's clothing. They're calling him transgender. I do not think that's proper labeling. I don't think there's any indication he was transgender. He may have been, dressed in drag. He may have been a cross-dresser. I don't know. But what I do know is that when they released Heuermann's Google searches, one of his Google searches was Asian twink. Food for thought. All right, let's listen to what Mary Ellen, I don't want to misname her, Mary Ellen O'Toole has to say.
Mary Ellen, that's exactly what I want to ask you about. This happened in 1996, 16 years before the 3 killings that Rex Heuermann has already been charged with. The MO is also significantly different. So do serial killers change the way they commit crimes?
Yes, serial killers do change, and there's 2 features to a serial killer case. You have the MO, which stands for the modus operandi, and then you have the signature of the serial killer. And we learned working hundreds of serial murder cases in the BAU that the MO can change over time, and it can change because it's too difficult to do it the same way. It can change because they've read about other cases that do it differently, but the MO will likely change. The signature will not. And the dismemberment in a case can be very difficult. And so that if this is connected to Heuermann, there could have been reasons like that he would have discontinued that behavior.
In 1996, Mary Ellen, Rex Heuermann was 32 years old. A few months after this murder, he married his wife. In general, when do serial killers begin killing?
What we've seen traditionally is in their early to mid-20s, they will start acting out. So I would suspect that if he is responsible for Karen's murder, you still want to go back in time for when he was in his 20s to look at other possible murders that he committed, especially look for what we call the practice murders. And these are murders where they learn, how do you dispose of a body? What about the weapon? What kind of victim do I want? Those practice murders are when they make mistakes. But I would suspect looking back in his early 20s will also
Okay, she's talking about looking back to his early 20s. What I want to look at is where these victims, okay, so here's Fire Island. This is where Karen was found. Somebody was asking where Fire Island is. Fire Island isn't this little strip right here. You have to take a ferry from Bayshore or some other part of the South Shore. Here's where the female toddler was. They're all in the same basic location. You know, to think that we have 2 serial killers dumping bodies in the same dumping grounds is scary. And somebody else said that too, that it's very highly unlikely. And that perhaps after these victims, the Gilgo 4 were found in 2010, he changed his dumping grounds to somewhere else. All right, so she's talking about practice murders. Let's go back to that.
Identify some murders.
I've just got to ask you, in all your studies of serial killers, I mean, how unusual would it be for somebody to spontaneously start killing around 2010 and kill, he's been accused of killing 3 people, possibly 4, a prime suspect and a 4th, and then just suddenly stop? In other words, I think everybody had a hard time believing he just stopped in 2010.
Right. So you're exactly right. You look at the beginning and you look at the end. People don't just wake up, however, one morning and decide, change completely their personality and say, I'm going to become a serial killer. Now, what does that involve? So there is an evolutionary process that has to take place. But as far as a serial killer stopping, we know that that happens anecdotally. So you have cases like BTK, bind, torture, kill. He stopped until he inserted himself back into his own investigation. And then you had the killer out in California over the last year who went on for years, and then he suddenly stopped. So we know it happens, but usually the reason is there are other things that are going on in their lives that force them to stop. Sometimes it's health. I've had serial killers tell me, Mary Ellen, it's just too hard. It's a lot of hard work to be a serial killer.
She said serials tell her that it's a lot of hard work to be a serial. The way she just said that was like she was relaying someone like her recipe for her famous, bread pudding. I mean, that was just crazy, wasn't it? I guess, just another Tuesday for her. But, I've had serial killers tell me that it's not easy being a serial killer. I love that. I love her.
So I had to kind of slow down.
Yeah.
And then you have family pressures as well. So anecdotally, we do know it happens.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com.
Okay, so I thought she had a very interesting perspective, and she is a pretty famous FBI profiler, like a senior FBI profiler. She's retired now. There is another professor of criminology who also has an opinion with regard to this. And let's just see what he has to say, because I see that there's somebody in the chat, a couple of people who think it could be two different serial killers. And look, it could. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on this. I just like to listen to what the experts have to say. So let's see what they have to say with Brian Enton on last night's News Nation.
Agree. It does seem like this might not be Heuermann. This may be a different situation.
Well, I agree with most of what he is saying, but I can come up with a scenario where actually it could be Heuermann, and that is this: as he said, the bodies were staged. The dismembered bodies, including Vergata, were staged. That's part of the MO, and the MO is subject to change and evolution, however. So let's just say that it was Heuermann who was responsible for Vergata. Over time, he learns that dismemberment is a lot of work and a lot of trouble, and the bodies were never discovered. Maybe he comes to the conclusion by the time he gets to the Gilgo 4, all I really need to do is just cover them up with camouflage burlap, conceal them, and it'll be fine. So it's still an attempt to conceal, and it's still an attempt to throw the police off, but it could be an evolution in his modus operandi.
Billy, it is weird to think, I mean, is it really plausible and possible that there are multiple killers who didn't know about each other, killing sex workers and, throwing their bodies away in the same area? I mean, do you think that's really a possibility here, Billy?
Absolutely, yeah. It's happened before. It happened in the killing fields in Texas. It happened with the I-5 killer in California. They kept thinking that they just had one killer. It turns out they had multiple killers. And this is Long Island, and Long Island had, especially around that time, we're talking about the mid-90s, you had Schulman as, that was killing sex workers. You had Rifkin. You also had Bitroff. So there's a lot of killers that are on Long Island operating. And it's not that much of a stretch to think that a killer, there were multiple killers that were using this stretch of Ocean Parkway to deposit the remains.
I don't know. That's kind of scary. I don't remember Robert Schulman, but maybe somebody else has some more information on that than I do. I do know about Joel Rifkin, and I do know about John Bitroff. And if anybody has any further insight into the John Bitroff case, I find this very interesting because I have tried to research this trial and there is hardly any information on it. John Bitroff was convicted of killing two women who were also found nearby, one by the name of Rita Tangredi, who went missing in 1993, November of 93. She was found, her body was found naked in East Patchogue. The cause of death was blunt force head trauma and strangulation. She was missing one shoe, a sneaker. She was posed, and there were wood chips on her body. The second victim that he was convicted of killing was a woman named Colleen McNamee, who went missing in January of 1994. Her body was found in North Shirley, which is not that far. All of these places are in Suffolk County. She was naked. Her skull was crushed. She had a sneaker missing, and she was posed as well. There were also wood chips on her body. What I did find out about his trial was that he claimed to be innocent. Okay, no surprise there. But there was a significant mishandling of evidence in his case. There was something like 180 pieces of evidence that went missing. So I'm not saying this guy's innocent or he didn't do it. He was convicted. But if you look at those two killings, the MO is similar. The Eastbound Strangler cases were also missing shoes. They have also said the Gilgo 4 were missing a significant piece of clothing. They've never told us what that was, but I've seen some, and if you see the loop that they keep showing of the law enforcement searching the bramble and the marsh, you will see a close-up shot of them picking up one sneaker. It's a black sneaker with white Adidas stripes on it. So it's just something to think about. Okay, Rochella, thank you. She's always on the Google for me. Robert Yale Shulman was an American serial killer, a postal worker from Hicksville on Long Island, was convicted of murdering 5 women between 91 and 96, the year he was arrested. Okay, I don't know what his MO was. But it's some food for thought. I have a bunch of starred comments here, so let's take a look. Okay, HM says, people really need to understand that cross-dressing has nothing to do with being transgender. Cross-dressing is a sexual fetish. Yeah, exactly. So I think that they're mislabeling him, and I'm just going to call him as transgender. And I don't know why all the media have glommed onto that. I really don't. I don't think it's been shown that there was anything transgender about him, but I don't know. Somebody else says, Root Trackers, they're working on Peach's genealogical tree. The tattoo artist came forward a while ago in Connecticut about her. Well, that's good news. That's good news. Hopefully they can identify her soon. Okay, Elisa says, when did he buy his mother's home? He bought his mother's home in 1994. So here's what's interesting. I'm going to go back to a little bit of his history. How do I hide this comment? I don't know. This thing is crazy. Okay, anyway, so in 1975, Rex's father, Theodore Heuermann, died at age 50 when Rex was 11. Rex graduated high school in 1981 from Berner High School. I think it's in Massapequa, with Billy Baldwin was a classmate of his. In February of 1988, Rex's brother, Craig, who was 22 years old at the time, was in a car accident. I think he was on the Southern State Parkway in Massapequa, and he killed a housing authority police captain in a drunk driving accident. He was also coked up, and he was something like at least twice the legal limit. Craig goes to jail October 5th of 88. And he gets out of jail on August 27th of 1990. He's incarcerated at a place called Camp Gabriel's, which closed in 2009. It's sort of like north of Lake Placid. And then he was on parole in August of 1991. He got off parole in August of 91. And I think maybe that's when he moved down to South Carolina. You may recall he was in possession of the green Avalanche that had belonged to Rex before, that law enforcement seized, and they are now looking at this green Chevy Avalanche for evidence. This is interesting. And thank you so much, Through My Lens, because I saw you post this somewhere else and I didn't get a chance to highlight it. And she or he says, I can't tell. I believe I dealt blackjack to Rex at a casino in Connecticut. That is very interesting to me because I have wanted to know if he's a gambler. Because if he's a gambler, that gives us all the more connection to Atlantic City and the Atlantic City Four, the Eastbound Strangler. Those women were all sex workers, all escorts. They were all posed as well. They have said so far they do not think he's involved in those killings. But maybe he is, and maybe they think he is, and they're just trying to keep it quiet and not telling us anything. So in March of '88, there were a string of killings in New Bedford, Massachusetts. And if anybody knows more about this, I was going to do a deep dive into this. I haven't had a chance yet, but I think there were 10 or 11 women, same kind of thing, same kind of MO, all escorts, killed near the water, same kind of dumping grounds. And they calling that person the New Bedford highway killer. They've never caught that person. Those murders, or those women went missing between March of '88 and April of '89. Rex was married for the first time on September 29th of 1990. He married a woman named Elizabeth Ryan. They were married in New Jersey. They had a 3-year marriage, no kids. They lived in New Jersey at the time. So he's also got connections to New Jersey, I think New Brunswick. All of this is it's very interesting to me, you know, as an armchair detective. He bought his house in Massapequa Park, his parents' house, in 1994, which was around the time, remember, of those two killings that Bitrolf is in jail for, Colleen McNamee and Rita Tangredi. Karen Vergata is last seen Valentine's Day of 1996. She was an escort from New York City, Jane Doe number 7, who was just identified yesterday. Heuermann marries Asa Ellerup in April of 1996. So 2 months after Karen Vergata goes missing. And then the same month that Rex and Asa marry, that's when Karen's legs were found on Fire Island. The rest of her remains were found in 97. I think Peach's torso was found in 97. That's what it was. And then in 2000, that's when Valerie Mack's torso was found in Manorville. Interestingly enough, she was last seen in Atlantic City, New Jersey. 2003, Jessica Taylor was found. She was a 20-year-old escort. Her torso was found in Manorville as well. So you tell me, do you think he could be responsible for these things? Or do you think we have another serial killer out there? I really don't know which is worse. Let me know what you think. All right. Let's see what we have here. Rochella says, I heard his first wife divorced him for infidelity, DV, and his obsession with online dating sites, right? And I think an addiction to escorts as well. I don't know. I haven't confirmed that, but I did see that too. I'm not sure. So I'm going to put I'm going to put a link to the stream in the chat. Is there anybody that wants to come on and do a little town hall? We were going to do that with Duty Ron the other night, but yesterday, but we ran out of time. Just Samantha says, I think he killed in sprees on his so-called hunting or business trips, dumps bodies in groups of 4. It's very possible. Joey Brooklyn says, I think it's very possible there is a connection. Peter says, thinking one more killer. I know. Why can't we find him? Or her. Okay, so I'm going to put the link to the StreamYard in the chat. I would like, if anybody wants to come in, you can come in, but you need to have your camera on. Okay, there's the link. Have your camera on, have a decent mic, be lit. We want to be able to hear you and see you. If anybody would like to come in, if anybody's got the guts, I did put it in the chat earlier to give you time in case anybody wanted to be camera ready. Some people are in their pajamas. They don't want to come on TV. Well, it's not really TV, but whatever. Okay, wait, hold on. Susan, did Rex live in North Reading, Mass in 1988? I'm from nearby. Back then, New Bedford killings were almost all, hookers, escorts from the New Bedford Strip. Almost all were found on Route 140 in Freetown, Mass. Yeah, and here's what's interesting about that too. Back in 1988, there were places that you could just go and pick up women. You didn't have to go into Backpage. You didn't have to go on Craigslist. You didn't have to set up a Tinder date. You could just go places, certain strips. Same thing in Atlantic City. These girls were on a place that was like a strip where you could just pick them up. So obtaining victims was easier. It didn't take as much work to get the victims. But yes, I don't know. He does have an address in Massachusetts. I don't know if he was there in 1988. But I'm sure they're tracing his whereabouts and they're going to try and find out where he was during those times. I hope they're looking into those as well. All right, nobody's got the guts to come in. So I'm just going to keep talking. Oh, Sherry's not camera ready. I was about to head to the pool when I realized you were on live. All right, well, go swim with your puppies. We'll miss you. Maybe next time. North Reading is far from New Bedford. Yeah, but not that far. If you want to do it far enough away from home, right? I mean, far enough away from home. Hello, I see Tina backstage there, but I don't see that your camera's on. So if you put your camera on, it says device is not connected. Nobody's camera ready. People are in their pajamas. Tina, I can't see you. Put your camera on. Carly says, how many men are picking up girls in Manhattan and dumping them at Gilgo? Too many coincidences. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Thank you, Jason Lazowski, for the $10 super sticker. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for tuning in. You know, it's interesting because YouTube gives you like all of these analytics on your channel, and 85% of my audience is women. I love that. But it doesn't seem that the men are watching. So, you know, what's up with that? Also, 80% of people who watch my videos are not subscribed. So again, what are you waiting for? Just hit that subscribe button. Stephanie says the first online dating site was launched in 1995, which was Google. That's good info. Or if anybody has questions that they just want me to answer in the chat. Oh, there's Cammie. Hi, Cammie. You want to come on? Okie doke. Hi, Cammie. Cammie was so kind enough to help me today. And doesn't my audio sound great?
Oh, it sounds amazing.
Thank you. What do you got?
So, yeah, this is really interesting. I have been thinking that I heard a couple of things. Number one, the reason why I think Rex could be involved is number one, they had the press conference like so soon after they had the announcement of the arrest and they waited. It's like they waited for that to happen and then they brought this in. So that to me tells me they're looking into it pretty heavily. And I kind of wonder if they didn't find something at the house during the search.
Yeah.
They kind of brought that together. So that was one of the things I was thinking. The other thing I was thinking was that escort, and I can't remember her name, the one that had the date with him. She has kind of
Oh,
the
yes,
blonde hair. What's her name?
Nikki,
Yeah.
the blonde, yeah, with the
Yeah,
blonde braids,
blonde.
yeah, the one who
Yeah,
was all over
so
the news, yeah.
when he talked to her, because he likes to talk about the LISK case, he talked about the LISK 10 victims,
He did. I know.
and I was like, so I don't think that's by accident. I mean, he's
Right.
taking some, credit for that.
Yes.
I think in a weird
I
way.
thought so too. Yeah, I thought so
So
too. And he had mentioned, actually there were a couple of women that came forward and said, I went on a date with this guy. I think there was one woman who was in like a networking group of his.
right,
And every woman that he spoke to, that he brought up the Gilgo Beach serial killer, he always said, "Oh, that guy killed 10 people, you know."
right, and to me that's not. I mean, these kinds of people have like a little narcissistic personality disorder or something, and they are going to take credit where they can. I mean, so I just feel like that's not an accident, and I don't know that that's really good in court. Obviously, that's not a court thing, but
Right. It would be hearsay. It wouldn't be admissible, but it's kind of like a humble brag, don't you think? It's kind of like, yeah, look at me, like, and then like, and he seemed to also target women who were really into true crime. Do you notice that? Because the ones who did speak out were all really into true crime. So it was kind of like, he would be almost like seen as a hero. And did you see the video, the interview that he did with that? I think he was a French real estate guy, like a
I
realtor.
watched the whole thing. Yeah, and he was. I'm surprised that's the only one he's ever done like that. But really interesting to see kind of how the hammer, his little hammer, his.
That was creepy,
hammer,
right? He was like talking about some like carpentry hammer, like, oh, sometimes I gotta be the guy who brings down the hammer.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting. The guy you were talking about a few minutes ago, and I'm trying to remember his name, the one you couldn't find any information on, that killed the two women that's in jail.
Oh, John Bitrolf.
Yeah, Bitrolf. He also, his MO, he also did blunt force trauma to their head.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we can look at that too. I mean, this is another thing to throw in there.
The hammer. The hammer. Those killings were in like 1993. Okay, right?
Yeah.
So by 2010, he's just choking them out. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he's picking smaller women because it's easier.
Yeah.
I don't know how big those.
Well, and also I've seen pictures of him when he was younger. He was a little more thin and fit. I mean, as you age, I mean, as we do, you gain a little bit of extra weight, and it does get harder to do all of the things that you did maybe when you were a little bit younger and a little bit fitter.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I feel like the guy is clearly like, playing cat and mouse, even in custody right now. You can kind of, he's glaring at people, and his wife is taking his calls. I did hear that.
I heard that too, and maybe it's kind of like about the divorce, like I saw her divorce lawyer on TV talking about that.
I've always thought nobody really talks about this, about why she'd be angry. Of course, she has all these escorts and everything. But what I would be the most mad about is that my hair is in that crime scene. That would piss me off as a wife and a woman. I'd be so mad.
Right, and not
my hair, like. And I don't know if your hair falls out like mine does, but it falls out a lot.
I mean, look, we shed, right?
Yeah,
but that's going to be the hardest thing, in my opinion, for the defense attorney to explain away.
Yeah.
His hair, maybe he could say I had a date with that, whatever. But if her hair was in that burlap, and the burlap was at their house, and her hair was found on 3 different victims.
Yeah.
That's going to be rough. Let's see. Angie says, what do you think the chances are him confessing like BTK?
No.
I don't see it.
Well,
you know why?
Maybe once he's like convicted and but right now, I don't think so, because he's just too crafty. He thinks he's smart.
Yeah, New York does not have the death penalty, so he's got nothing to lose. What are they going to offer him for a confession? I just don't see it. I think he's
well, if he does get convicted, then I do think that he'll talk about it, because he'll want to, just like BTK. Dennis. I should call him Dennis. His daughter really likes us not to call him BTK.
Oh yeah,
because she's like, yeah, don't give him the credit.
He named himself that too, didn't he? Make up his own little nickname.
So I think he talks just to stay relevant, like to get popped up in the news. Otherwise he'd just be rotting in jail and nobody would talk about him or know about him.
Yeah, I think so too. I think a lot of it is about notoriety.
Yeah.
All good points.
But right now it's
Thanks,
not.
Cammy. All right, I have somebody
All
else
right.
waiting here.
Good.
Hi,
Bye.
Third My
Good to see
Lens.
you.
Awesome. Third My Lens, you ready? Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. All right, come on in. Hi, how are you? How are you tonight?
Hi, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I've been waiting to kind of share this experience with everyone.
Yeah.
I was a blackjack dealer at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, which is directly and basically across from the Long Island Sound. We have ferries that constantly come over from the area, so we're constantly communicating and working with people from Long Island. It's part of our community almost.
Yep. For 1 second, just let me interrupt you 1 second. So there's a ferry that goes from Orient Point, which is the easternmost tip of Long Island, to New London, Connecticut. And when you get off the ferry in New London, they have a bus that will take you right to Mohegan Sun. Yeah. Right.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
it will. So you can
easy to
take a
get there.
high-speed ferry over and you bring your car.
You're kind of breaking up on me.
And the areas on Long Island where the roads next to the beaches. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The roads next to the beaches are very desolate. Even during the day when you're walking, when you're driving on there, you're not seeing many people. It's definitely a secluded area.
I think I lost you again. You froze up.
Yeah. So I did want to tell you about the experience. Can you hear? You're spinning.
Yep.
So I had an experience with who I think was Rex Heuermann on my blackjack table. He was just a single person that came up to my table, and what made me remember him is that all night long he was taunting me in a very specific way, saying that my husband was at home and that he was bringing women to our home while I was at work. Like, kept it up, and it was more detailed over time. He sat on my table for 8 hours and consistently taunted me that he was very detailed about
wait, hold
how,
on. Your audio's going out at all the
he drops
important
you off
parts.
at work, he picks up other women, and it was like he enjoyed seeing my reaction of being defensive and upset about it. And he just kept
When
on
was this?
all
Do you know
night
what year
long,
this was?
and it was something that those kind of experiences. Yeah, it was quite a while ago. It was like 22 years ago, probably around 2003.
Okay. 2003.
That
okay.
this happened, and it stuck in my mind. I remembered what he looked like. You spend 8 hours with a person, they make an impression on you. So he stayed the whole shift, and what really struck me was how the other women the other women in the interviews were talking about how he enjoyed the taunting behavior, and it really like struck a chord. When I wasn't sure about who he was, I was watching the interviews and they didn't show anything of him wearing glasses. And I thought, well, it's probably not the same person. But then I saw an interview where he was talking about his architecture. He had a pair of glasses sitting on the table. And it was like chills down my spine when I saw those glasses, because that was like the final picture of who I saw in my mind from my memory and what he looked like. He was considerably thinner than now at that time too.
Wow. So this would have been like all right, you're saying 2003. And somebody said in the chat that you were 23 years old at the time. And you spent 8 hours with this guy. Yeah. And so, but he made such an impression on you because he was so creepy that you never forgot him. And this is 23 years ago. Yeah. So what reminded you of this? Was it when you saw his picture in the paper that it jogged your memory, or is this something that you've kind of remembered all this time?
And the way he said to you that he's like, they're there touching your stuff. And it was just like such a weird detail to me, like that it really made me like feel upset. And when I thought about the fact that they said that he possibly brought these girls to his home, it made me really wonder, like, was he talking about something that he had done himself, bringing women to his home? He acted as if this is just what all men do and that I should understand that, and that he was making me wise to who men were. It was a very weird experience. I've
Wait,
never
so
met
I want you to
anyone with the same
rewind.
kind of vibe. Go ahead.
I want you to rewind for a little bit because you did fade in and out a little bit. So people were saying that they wanted you to repeat a portion of that story. So you said that he said that people were touching your stuff. Can you just rewind a little bit and talk about that again? Because I think we missed it with the connection.
He was taunting me by saying that while I was at work, my husband would pick up women and bring them to our home. And that he said, right, like basically his taunting of me would get more advanced as the time we spent together. And that the woman is at your house right now and she's probably touching your stuff. She's probably laying on your bed and basically just advancing the description of what this fantasy woman that he's bringing to my house to cheat on me with while I was at work. It was a bizarre way to taunt someone. Very bizarre.
Yeah. Like he was trying to get under your skin. Like, it sounds like a personal anecdote, almost, right? Of his. Like that's something that he would do. But how did he know you were married? He just saw a ring and he just assumed and he just started spewing this bullshit at you? Like, how did that even... I'm sure you weren't telling him any of your personal information. It's not like you, right?
Well, there was some conversation. First about, back then I wasn't really thinking about it. I had a picture of my son on my badge. You wear a ring. You don't think about, the fact that you're giving me details of your life. Oh.
Yeah, you were young.
Yeah. Sorry, my dog.
Right? You work for tips. You work for tips, right? You try and be friendly with these people so that they tip you, right? Have you contacted law enforcement or has anybody contacted you? I didn't hear you.
I did call the tip line. Okay. I did let them know. Nope, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I did call the tip line and let them know my experience. As far as the casino having video, I believe they've probably already contacted the casino if they, I think that there's a connection to that. I really don't want to put out because it's kind of personal towards the victims' families. But I think that he was visiting Connecticut on a regular basis.
That's
Norwich
interesting.
is where Maureen is from, and the casino Mohegan Sun is in Norwich, Connecticut, essentially in Uncasville. And I think that it's very possible that because he liked stalking the victims' families, that I think that it's a possibility that he probably visited after the 2007 when she disappeared, and probably
visited the families
on a regular basis.
You mean tried to visit the families? Yeah, because we know that he did.
The casino
take
is a
one
good
of
place.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The casino is a place that you probably be able to be a voyeur of local people that would be possibly connected to one of the victims. So I think that he really, if he's the same person that I met, he really enjoys the taunting part, and that seems to be what really motivated him when I was talking to him, was that poking, and I want to get under your skin
like a sadist would. Dakota says people with ventromedial prefrontal.
And like I said, I've never met anyone.
Yeah, there must be a delay. Go ahead. Dakota says people with ventromedial prefrontal cortex injuries are more likely to become pathological gamblers. That would explain his sadistic behavior as well. That's an excellent point.
But with him having a property in Las Vegas, a timeshare, he spent time in Massachusetts. We have other casinos there. He spent time, I believe, in Norwich and probably at Foxwoods or Mohegan Sun also. So and the type of person that he is, with being an architect and from New York. The social scene is very much included with the casinos for people who are successful in the city.
Right.
We are a place that they come and get away, and it's a good place to get away for a couple of days and enjoy yourself and get away from the city. So it's definitely a place that
Yeah.
people from New York come all the time.
And it's high end, and they have good concerts there too. There's a lot of really good concerts. People, it's a destination place for concerts and for, you know, all kinds of things. I mean, it's high end. It's not as you know, like the casino in Queens. That's like, you know, you wouldn't want to go there. These are high end hotels. They have high end food. They have excellent restaurants, and it's like a city. It's really like it's a city in there. I mean, it's huge.
Yes, they are like a city within themselves.
Let me just read this comment. The Truth says, I'll bet these women figured Rex was like a typical harmless, nerdy John. My guess is that he tricked the victims in handcuffs like John Wayne Gacy. What do you make of that?
I would say yes. It's definitely something that he definitely was probably charming and disarming at first. I definitely think even the way that he was taunting me was not in a way that would make somebody be completely at guard. It's more of I guess more of something that you would expect he looks like your neighbor. He doesn't look like somebody. It was just a guy in a polo shirt, you know, a normal person. And with the availability of funds that he has, people are a lot of times less on guard when people have a little bit of money in their pocket. And you are in a more affluent area such as Connecticut or Long Island. You know, we don't, I think that his status in the community helped him very much hide. You know, and expect someone who has so much to lose to be so dangerous. And I think that's one of the ways that he got the girls to put their guard down, is that, oh, well, I've got this business, I've got this home, I've got things to lose, and you don't. So, you know, I think that's one of the things he used to protect himself.
Yeah. Samantha, can you put your question in the chat again? Because I just can't find it. The chat's going nuts. And so if you can put it in there again, I'll watch for it. My question to you is, he's there for 8 hours, right? Is this like a $5 table? Is it a $100 table? What's the minimum bet? And how much money did he spend or lose during that time? If you have any, you know, if you remember.
I would typically deal on tables that were $25 or more a hand. So it being, as far as I can remember, I believe it was a weekend because it was a sort of a busy night. We weren't exactly on the table alone all night long. There were people that came in and out. I would probably say, if memory served correct, probably like a typical $500 buy-in. And, you know, with that, you can kind of eke that out through the night. And you know, as long as you don't get completely walloped. Unfortunately, the cards weren't with me that night where I was able to push them out.
Really? So he lost a couple $1,000s. I mean,
yeah, it typically, yeah. I mean, I don't remember specifically, but he could have even won and cashed out by the end of the night. He played enough to where he was skilled enough to where he played with blackjack rules. He understood how to play the game. So it wasn't that he was there to just be dumb and completely burn his money. He seemed to be a experienced gambler.
Yeah, I mean, you could sit there for 8 hours and just keep playing with the same money, really, right? And get free drinks. Was he drinking?
Yes.
Heavily? Because I've heard that
I
he's a
don't know
heavy
what
drinker.
they're drinking. It could be that they were drinking, you know, he could have been drinking water in a glass, or he could have been drinking straight vodka. It's just really hard to tell sometimes what, you know, I don't remember exactly what he was drinking.
Wow. Does anybody have any questions for our blackjack dealer? I don't want to dox you and give out your real name. So, if anybody has any questions, I'm going to just go to Samantha for a second. Did you see the Newsday interview with the DA? He states 3 victims will be identified very, very soon. Interview was the day before the press conference. Oh, is that the one that Joy Brown did with him, the video interview? I did see it. and I have it, but I wasn't going to play any parts of it because I had a feeling that Newsday would like give me a copyright infringement strike. So I have to go back and watch it again. But so they identified one. So you think that they're going to identify the two more? Maybe they found out who Peaches is and her daughter. That's what I'm thinking. Let's see if we have any. Everybody's stunned. They don't have any questions. Like, what?
Yeah,
well,
but that
I
was the
mean,
thing that really struck me when it's all these years later, he stayed in my mind. Like it was as if my brain was like, you need to remember this information. And
right.
when I met him, I'm obviously a little bit older than 23 now, but I was only 23 at the time. And um, I fit the facial structure and the hair color along with the victims that he has, and it just, I just think that I was good to play with on the table for the night, but wasn't somebody that would have been a very good target. I have a family. I had somebody
Mhm.
looking out for me. I had a
Yeah.
man at home. I was someone who was fun to play with for the night, but I don't know what exactly attracted him to my table in the first place. So
How tall are you?
I am I'm 5'7".
Okay, so you're tall. Like most of his victims were very like, 5 feet, like around 5 feet. So, but yeah, I mean the facial structure Carly says, why didn't she report him? The casinos I go to don't tolerate that type of stuff at tables. This was 20 years ago. And the guy
That's
didn't
not
do
something
anything.
that no, they would not do anything about that.
They wouldn't kick
I
him
would get
out. He was just being
reprimanded
creepy,
before.
right?
Yeah, you can pretty much. I mean, I've had situations where I've been threatened on the table and they will take them off. But you have to actually threaten. It was somebody that actually threatened to actually shoot. So that was something that they took seriously.
Wow.
But somebody just being a jerk on the table and like bugging you, they're really not going to care as long as he's putting money on the table.
Right, and I bet you see that every day.
Yeah.
A lot of
It's
jerky
hard to
people in
tell.
casinos. I mean, how do you, unless somebody like really physically threatens you. The snooper says your radar went off. Always listen to our gut. I'm raising 3 girls and educating constantly. A monster will never be mean until he has you in the car, etc. Just like grooming. 100%, 100%. And I have 3 teenage girls, and we talk about this all the time. At least one of them is in the chat right now, and you can confirm that we talk about this all the time.
And our boys
And you
too.
have to. Yeah. I mean, all of your kids, like they have to know that they can call you anytime, night or day. You'll come pick them up. No questions asked. We have like a symbol that we can, that we give each other on text. Like sometimes it'll be like if they're at a party and they want to leave, but they don't want to, they have like a symbol that they can just text and I'll come and get them. Or, anything. If you're going to be on a date, if, these people that they're my kids' friends are going on dates for, on apps and stuff. And I'm like, you have to always tell someone where you are. Put your location on your phone. Somebody needs to know where you are, who you're with. Don't get in a car with anybody that you don't know. Take a picture of their license plate and send it to your friend. There's always got to be at least one person who knows where you are at all times, especially in this crazy world of online dating and meeting up with strangers in places. And it really, really scares me because it's scary. Raising kids in this day and age is really scary.
It is, and humans being a commodity, with the sound of freedom and understanding how the human trafficking is becoming more of an industry that makes more money than drugs and weapons. That's absolutely frightening.
Yeah.
And I live outside of New York City. It's one of the biggest hubs of the world, and it's just frightening to think that we as human beings could be looked at as dollar bills and not valuable people. We're all treasures, and always go with your instincts. To definitely not ever stray from your instincts. I saw somewhere that the girls, that each one of them had broken their own safety protocols and ended up missing after.
Right.
And, I don't downgrade anyone who happens to be in the sex industry. I don't judge that. But you got to keep your safety protocols up. One of the interviews that I watched with the young lady that had gone on the date with Rex Heuermann and had been talking about how she did not go with him because he wanted her to go in his car and she had her car and she wanted to take her car. That probably saved her life. insisting that she wanted to take her car, and not breaking those little protocols that we set up just because you might have a little bit of a trust for somebody. People play on your emotions. They look for things, especially psychopaths. They look for what they're going to say and how they're going to lay their trap perfectly for you. So if you have any inkling of danger, just better safe than sorry. In this world we live in, you have to go with it.
Right. And don't be afraid to be mean or rude or whatever you think. Your gut is there for a reason, and it's telling you something. It's telling you that your instincts are probably right. Lucy Bell is asking a question of you. Did this man at your blackjack table have missing teeth? Do you remember if he was unkempt or decently groomed?
He was basically groomed as well as most other people at the casino. He didn't stick out to me as anything. He didn't have any missing teeth. He seemed to be like well groomed enough. He wore like a light polo shirt. He had glasses, and he didn't seem out of the ordinary as far as his hygiene or his look of being unkept.
Yeah, I think he is missing some teeth now. I think I did see a picture of him with an open mouth smile, and I think there was one of his front teeth were missing.
This is like 21 years ago.
Yeah,
too,
this was a long time ago. But
I hope one of those girls got his tooth.
Kristen said, were you nervous walking out to your car after your shift that night, or did they have a protocol where somebody would walk you to your car like a bouncer?
We have our own employee section, so it wasn't very easy for anyone who wasn't an employee to actually access where we were parking. In addition to that, I would get picked up every day from my husband. So
okay, good.
Like I said, I was not a very good target. I was very protected. I always
Right.
had a male escort. I was with somebody on a regular basis. So that also being at the casino, you're on camera the whole time. So, it might be a good place to come and like maybe mess with somebody. It may not be a good place to take somebody home. So I at that point, he also none of the women were reported missing. So I don't know if he was in a period where he was just kind of perusing the area or,
Right. Well,
shopping, so to speak.
Aren't there a number of unsolved cases of escorts in Bridgeport, Connecticut? That's another cluster. And I'm not.
That's so
my
close
notes.
too.
Yeah, Bridgeport is close, and that's where the other ferry goes to. That's where the Long Island ferry from Port Jefferson goes to Bridgeport. And I know that there were a cluster of women. Those are also unsolved. So in one of my rabbit holes, I did look into that. But Cami is asking, did he just talk all the time? What did the other people at the table say or do?
Well, first of all, the positioning that he took on the table was, I don't know if you're familiar with blackjack tables.
am.
They have the spot 1 to 7. He sat on the on my right side, which would be the area of the table that I would be concentrating on the most. As a blackjack table, you kind of stand with your back towards one side of the table and you face the other side so that you have a full view of the table while you're dealing the cards. He sat in a spot on the table where no matter what, I would be basically kind of looking at him and not have him in my peripheral. When he was also the atmosphere of the casino and the fact that this was way before Me Too. This is time period where it's like kind of men still openly had bad behavior in certain areas.
Yeah.
And the casino
Tell
is
me about it.
definitely one of those places.
Mhm.
So, it's not that even what he was saying would be something that I would feel like other people would be really alert to. I mean, you hear him once say, "Oh, your boyfriend's cheating on you," and then they leave the table. They're not thinking that he's staying there and saying that to me for 8 hours straight.
Right. So they didn't pick up on it, but he was there the whole time. He never left your table.
Yes.
He never switched. Did you ever swap? So you were at that table because usually they swap out dealers, right? After a certain period of time. Or did he
stay on
insist
the
that you
table.
stay?
No, you stay on the table for a whole hour, then you'll go for a break for 15 minutes, and then usually you're assigned to like one table, one game for the night. So we deal for an hour, then a 15-minute break, and that's throughout the whole 8 hours. So I would leave to go to break, and usually that's when you get rid of the players that you don't really care for. You come back and it'll be a fresh
Right.
table, but he just hung on and stayed there. I don't know. He could have stayed there for the next dealer too. But he definitely took a liking to me and did not want to leave my table. He definitely was there
Yeah.
and
I think
enjoying
something else that you
himself.
said also is that I wanted to dig a little deeper into, which I completely agree with, is, this goes for pedos as well, for serial killers. I mean, they target their victims very carefully. They have a specific type that they look for. They are going to choose someone who is not going to be reported missing right away. A lot of them have drug problems because they can always be, discredited as a witness if they ever get out alive. A lot of them do not have families, like you said, so there's nobody to report them missing. And a lot of them, I think eventually, as he got older, he started targeting smaller women because it was easier for him to overpower them, and to do what he wanted to do. Lucy Bell says, I long wondered if he lost his front tooth while assaulting a victim, avoided treatment and repair to avoid being caught or ID'd in the search for suspects. I think that's a great point. That is a great point. Mary Michael, thank you so much for this $9.99 super chat. Thanks for this episode. Many interesting factoids. Glad you're keeping an eye on the AC4. Keep up your good work. Thank you. Every time they say that they don't think the Atlantic City 4 is related, I'm like, what? Like, it just, as my armchair detectiveness, just my powers go up like, this has to be related. There's 4 of them. They're clustered. Their heads are all facing east. And I don't even know if that was intentional, that they were all facing specifically east, but they're all facing in the same direction. They're missing their shoes. They're missing their purses. They're missing their phones. They were all, found on the strip. They were all found in a drainage ditch behind a seedy motel in a place where gamblers hang out.
And Atlantic City is just as easy to go to Atlantic City if you're in New York as it is to go to Connecticut.
Right. But he also lived in New Jersey during his first marriage.
I think that his victims very much look like his first wife.
They do. And you know what? I have a picture. Let me see if I can just find it here real quick. But I have the wedding announcement. And you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
You are really right. So let me see if I can find that picture.
A lot different from his current wife, too.
Yes. She, yeah, I believe, yeah, I'm with you on that. So let me see if I can find this picture. If there's any other questions that you see in the chat that you want to answer while I'm looking for this, that would be great. All right, I can't find it right now, but I will. All right, we're just going to have to move on because I can't find it right now, but you're right. His first wife has short, curly, kind of dark hair and glasses. And, he's got an MO where for some reason he hates these women. And, I'm sure people will do a deeper dive into it that are experts. Do we know if he had a sexual preference? I'm just curious due to the unknown mail-in address. My thought on that was he may have been duped. He may have thought that he was ordering a woman and then, but based on his Google searches, Asian twink was the thing that he was Googling. He was also Googling the victims. He was also Googling the victims' family members and children. He was also Googling, and if you want to go back and look at the bail application, the Google searches, most of them I redacted because they were so horrific that I could never unsee them with regard to the materials that he was searching up to try and find videos of. It was absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific.
Petals had said that she had never seen a dealer at the same table. Because I was a high stakes dealer, I used to deal in the same pits, same tables fairly frequently. Generally, if you go in for the day, you're going to be on a table, and the dealers you see moving around are breakers. They're giving the other dealers relief on their tables. That's usually why you think that they don't stay on one table all night.
Interesting. Yeah. So you're in high stakes. So high stakes dealers stay longer at
Well,
the
there's
table.
less tables that were available for us to deal on that are of the higher limits. And I was actually in a lower limit pit that day. So like a $25 table was a lower limit that I would deal for.
Oh, okay. I found the wedding announcement. Let me see right here. All right, I'm going to share that.
One of the
I just kicked myself out of the stream. Okay, I'm back. I hit something, and I mean, these mouses. All right, let's try this one more time.
One of the things too about the Asian male,
Yep.
that in the casino life, there's a lot of that where we would see. That was like the first time I had ever seen somebody who cross-dressed was the Asian culture of Asian cross-dressers at the casinos. And that is definitely something that, like, in the area, that is a common thing that you would see is people who are of an Asian persuasion dressing as a female. And there's groups of them that go around, I guess, socially in the casino. And so that is something that I wonder. I've definitely seen on my blackjack table with men who don't realize they're flirting with somebody who is a man. And
Interesting.
and so it's I wonder if he didn't realize, or if it was something that he was looking for specifically, just as a different flavor for the evening. But it is something that you would be able to find quite frequently here. And in earlier days, it was something that, people are a lot more able to be open about who they are now. And it was more something that in that time period, it was, I guess, more of a taboo to reveal who you were.
Right. This Asian man, I believe, was found in 2010. So that would have been 10 years later. So yeah, if he had a penchant for that sort of a thing, and he was in Atlanta, at Mohegan Sun, and it was easily available, who knows what this guy's proclivities were? We really don't know, except for his Google searches. And this is one of his Google searches. Here's the wedding announcement from his first marriage. So this is his first wife. And I did see a similarity between this woman and when I was looking at the New Bedford killings, there were some women who looked very similar to this, which I found interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I just want to see if there's any more questions for you. I have one more caller. I have Tina Lucille waiting backstage, so I'm going to pull her up in a second.
Well, thank you for having me. It was
Thank
good
you
to be
so
able to
much for coming
share
in
the
and giving us all
experience.
that information.
Most definitely.
Keep in touch with me. My email is in the description of my channel, in the main channel description. So I would love to talk to you some more about this if you're interested in coming back, maybe doing a whole show about it.
Yes, I would be happy to be able to help in any way. And this person has haunted and scared and tortured everyone in this area. It's a relief to have him behind bars. And, thank you so much for giving the attention on this. We need to find out all of his victims and make sure he pays, and there's justice for everyone.
Yes, 100%. Justice for everyone, for all of them. Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking up and for telling us about your experience with him. For those of you who are just tuning in, our caller was a blackjack dealer in 2003 at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, which is right across the Long Island Sound from Orient Point. And she was a blackjack dealer in the high stakes, at a high stakes blackjack table, and dealt blackjack for 8 hours straight to Rex Heuermann, who was a creeper, to put it mildly, and said some really taunting things to her and some really inappropriate things, and just made her instincts go up like this was a bad guy, and has never forgotten about him until she saw him in the paper. And it was like, holy shit, this is the guy that I was dealing blackjack to for 8 hours. Wow.
Yes.
You're very lucky. And thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time. And I'm sure that everyone else does here as well. And if you weren't here for the beginning of the call, feel free to watch the replay and come back and watch it again. Thank you.
All right. I'll be in touch.
Thank you so
Melanie.
much. Awesome.
Have a great night.
Thanks
I'll
for
be in the
coming.
chat. Thanks.
Awesome.
Bye.
Okay. Bye. Okay, Tina, whenever you're ready, just give me a thumbs up and we'll pull you up. Thank you. Hello, Tina Lucille. I love your lights behind you. How are you tonight?
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Sorry, I'm not really camera ready, and I was having issues with my MacBook, so.
Oh, I know, me too, all day. And I'm trying to figure it out, but I can't figure it out. Do me one favor. Here's a little pro tip. Your eyeglasses. This is going to feel weird.
What?
No, tilt them up. Tilt the arms up, and I won't see a glare. Oh, there you go. That's good too.
Yeah, I just turned the brightness down, so
awesome.
It shouldn't affect you seeing me. Yeah,
I think
because I can't see without my glasses, and I get
know.
I'm already nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. There's a mirror. You look great. Look, I already have all these comments. Hello, Tina Lucille. You look great. Hi, Tina says, Cal. Hey, Tina. Look, everyone's so happy that you're so brave to come on.
Hello. Yeah. That young lady is so lucky, very lucky that she trusted her instincts and had a security protocol for herself to protect herself. So lucky, because it sounded obvious that he was targeting her, and she got away. It's so scary. I've been in situations in my life that I had a guardian angel that got me out of situations. When I think back, I'm like, oh my God,
Right.
I'm so lucky.
You have to pay attention to your gut, right? I mean, your gut is trying to tell you something, and what it's telling you is that you're right. That's why you're having these feelings, because you're right. Don't ever,
right. Exactly.
Don't ever not trust your gut. So important.
So what I wanted to talk about, if it's okay with you, is that, these cases are going back to 1996, but there are cases, if you go to the gilgocase.com website, that are going back to 1982, which this one girl, Tina Foglia, was found. She had gone to Hammerheads, and I'm sure you've heard of Hammerheads. I've been there because I'm from Brooklyn. I do have family in Suffolk County and Nassau County. In fact, my nephew is NYPD in Suffolk County. So, but they found her in 1982. She went to a concert at Hammerheads, hitchhiked, which we used to do as kids in Brooklyn, which is insane.
Didn't even think anything of it.
Oh, we knew it was not really that safe. We used to hitchhike to Rockaway, Reese Park from Brooklyn, and my best friend would hide in the bushes, and I would hitchhike, and as soon as somebody pulled up, she would jump out of the bushes, so it would be the two of us.
Right. Because they're more likely to pick you up if it's just one young lady, right? Instead of two.
But anyway, so they found her, and she was dismembered. She was dismembered, but thrown off the side of the highway.
Wow.
In that area, so close by, not far. So they put that case on gilgocase.com as a possible connected case.
Possible link. So that was in 1982. He graduated high school in 81.
Yeah.
So he would have been like getting his start. That was my feeling too. Like maybe he started dismembering because like it was fun and he had some really crazy sadistic desire to do that. And also he's thinking, okay, if there's no hands and no feet, it's going to be harder for them to identify. And then playing like this sort of cat and mouse game, like, okay, I'm going to put the head over here. I'm going to put the torso over here. I'm going to put the legs over here.
Right.
And then as he got older, he was just like, all right, why am I going through all this trouble when I could just
paying attention?
Right. Nobody's paying attention.
Yeah.
Right. And it was almost like he wanted those Gilgo 4 to be found the way they were positioned. They were a certain distance away from each other. They were pretty close to the road.
Right. He does remind me. So my theory is I think there is more than one because John Vitrioff, I mean, you know, he was arrested and convicted in 2014 for murders in the 90s in the same area. And they suspect him of up to 19 other murders. It's
Bitrolf?
Like, oh,
really?
Yes.
See, what I read about that, and here's the interesting thing. So those murders were in 93. 20 years later, his brother was arrested. And his brother was convicted of something, and his brother's DNA went into the system.
Right.
They matched that against semen that were found in the two victims, and that's how they connected the familial DNA. They arrested Bitrolf. I think they got an exemplar DNA of his, like maybe he threw out something like we see about the pizza crust, right, in this case. And that's how they connected him to the semen. Now, there was so much mishandling of evidence in that case that it was crazy. And, you know, I read a little something about some wood chips being found in the back seat of somebody's car in law enforcement, and they were kind of lost also. So there was a lot of, you know, I don't know. I was trying to get a hold of John Bitrolf's attorney to get him to come on the show. He's a pretty famous, like, you know, Suffolk County defense attorney.
Right.
And I would love to hear what he's got to say about it.
Yeah, there's so much other suspects. There's the, you know, of course, James Burke and his shenanigans. And then there's that one man who committed suicide after they found Shannon Gilbert. He was like a millionaire in the area. I can't remember his name. He owned that plant nursery, and then also he did some kind of work with an aquarium. So they looked at him, and then John. So you know that Rex Heuermann's defense attorney, who's very aggressive. I do like him though.
I do too. Don't you think he's going to be fun to watch? It's going to. Too bad it's not going to be televised, folks. But this guy is really fun to watch. If you haven't seen, go back and watch Michael Brown at the press conference. He's interesting.
Right, but you know he's going to bring all this up.
Yeah,
all of it. He's going to bring up John. He's going to bring up James. He's going to bring up the other guy. He's just going to bring it. He's going to probably throw Rex Heuermann's brother under the bus as well, because he's a character too. And
he's got a similar physical description.
Exactly.
So he's the same height, same build, same weight. You know, they must share some DNA, right? If they're brothers. So here's what's happening now. The prosecution has made a motion in court to compel Heuermann to give a buccal swab of his cheek of DNA.
Right.
And that is something that they have to ask the court to grant. So there's the 3-prong test. And I took some notes on this if I can find them. There's a 3-prong test that the court looks at to decide whether or not to compel Heuermann or a defendant to give a buccal swab DNA. And the reason that they're asking for that is because apparently the DNA sample that they have is not always admissible in court. It's not as reliable. That's like a mitochondrial DNA sample, the one that came from the pizza crust. So they want the buccal swab.
Right.
So the 3 things they have to prove in order to get the court to grant their motion is, number 1, that there's probable cause to believe that the defendant committed the crimes, which we have probable cause because a grand jury indicted him for these crimes. So there's your probable cause. Number 2, they have to show that there's a clear indication that relevant material will be found. They can prove that because they already have the exemplar DNA from the pizza crust and from the hairs that were found on the victims. From his hair. There was one hair that was found on the victims. The third thing is that the method to secure the buccal swab DNA is reliable and safe. And we know that. I mean, this is well tested. It's a cheek swab. There's no big whoop, right? So my feeling is that this motion is going to be granted. And I think this motion is returnable on August 15th. I don't know that it's going to be oral argument. A lot of judges in Suffolk take motions on paper. I know that if you've been watching other cases like Koberger with me and other cases like Vallow, they do oral argument on their motions. This judge may take it on paper. I have a feeling, though, that he is going to grant the motion to compel the cheek swab. And they also, though, because here's an interesting thing that the defense, that the prosecution brought up. They said to the judge, Judge, you should definitely grant this motion because it could also be exculpatory. Because if his DNA does not match the hair and the pizza crust, then it's going to be exculpatory. So, of course, you have to grant it.
Right.
So the defense can also cross move for a protective order and say, okay, well, even if you grant forcing him to do a swab, we want a protective order that this DNA cannot be uploaded into any of the local, national, or state databases. So that's what I think is going to happen. And then once they have that, they can start connecting him locally to these other things that we're talking about. It just can't go into the national database until there's a conviction.
Exactly.
Because
right.
that's New York law. You have to have a conviction.
Right. Ed Wallace said that, well, he was shocked that it couldn't go into CODIS, but he found out that they stopped doing that back in 2013 or 2012.
Yep.
Unless you were convicted. The only way you can get put in there.
That's correct.
Unless you were convicted.
Yep. And that's a lot of other states, will take your DNA upon arrest and they will upload it into CODIS. New York is it's a very strict state when it comes to a lot of things. And with other things, it's not. It's just weird. It's kind of like the Wild East, It's like there's no rhyme or reason. Like New York was the most pedo-friendly state in the country. I handled cases for the survivors of clergy sex abuse when that whole scandal broke here in 2002. And because the statute of limitations had expired, because so many people who are SA'd as children do not disclose until they are adults, these cases could not proceed because the statute of limitations had expired. So we fought for 15 years or more to change the law. So New York was very, very friendly to, if you kept a kid quiet enough, you would never go to jail.
Right, exactly.
And this is not anti-Catholic. I am Catholic, so let's not go there.
I went to Catholic school.
Me too. And it was very personal to me as well. So, New York is very strange with regard to a lot of archaic laws.
Right.
But, people who are defense attorneys will say, well, you can't just take everyone's DNA just because they're arrested. They haven't been, what if they're not guilty? What if they get exonerated and then you've got their DNA in a database? I mean, I don't know.
It's crazy. But how are we going to solve these cases? I know there's,
yeah,
this is how we're solving cases. So
right.
The one question I did have for you, were you in the courtroom when he came out during that hearing?
Yes.
Did he stare you down? Because I heard he stopped and he stared at everybody in that courtroom.
Yeah, I don't know who's reporting that. Okay. Somebody said he glanced back at the gallery, which was where we were sitting. I did not see him turn around at all. He did not say a word, but I tell you this, I felt evil in the room. This guy walked in. I was sitting in maybe the third or fourth row, and I sat on the aisle on purpose because I knew which door he was going to come in, and I didn't want to be over there and blocked. You could feel, and I'm not a spiritual, Ouija board kind of person. I could feel the evil emanating from him. It was crazy.
I could see
chilling. It was chilling.
When they showed him on TV, I could feel that. So I can only imagine being in the room with him and him, the biggest person in the room, but I could
shackled.
See he's a completely different person than on that interview with the French.
Yeah, wasn't that weird?
Yeah.
He was almost like affable and jovial and kind of joking, and he looked like kind of nerdy and then the way that our blackjack dealer described him was totally different, that he was taunting her. And then the girl, Nikki, who's been done the rounds on TV, who had a date with him, also said the same thing, trying to engage her about the Gilgo serial murders. And crazy.
Yeah, so hopefully, I don't know. It's so, he is allegedly or innocent until proven guilty, into torturing people.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
And he tortured the little sister with the phone calls. So him dragging this out is torturing the family.
Yeah.
His own family and the victims' families. And, Brian Koberg is doing the same thing.
Yeah. I don't want to spread any rumors, but I did a show on the first press conference. The press conference. This is the one I'm thinking of. The press conference after they searched his house, and the DA Tierney was doing the press conference, and he was asked several times by reporters about that vault in the basement where they found the 279 guns with the big steel door.
Right.
We are hearing there was a mattress in the vault. Was there a mattress in the vault? And the first time he ignored the question. The second time he said, well, there's a lot of things in the house. You know, it was very cluttered. There's a lot of clutter. There's a lot of clutter where there were 279 guns in that. So he completely avoided the question. They asked it a third time. And again, he diverted to something else. So somebody said, my spidey sense is up. Yeah, my spidey sense is up. There may have been a mattress in that vault. And that may have been where he took them and tortured them. Just like you're saying that if he was a torturist or torturer, that maybe when his wife was out of town with the daughter and then he had a place that he had control of, and who knows how long he kept them there. Do you remember the Katie Beers case from 1992 where that guy out in Suffolk County again? What's with Suffolk County and these creepy? He kidnapped her.
What's going on in Long Island? You know,
he kidnapped her and put her in an underground bunker that he designed specifically for her. She was 8 years old and he kept her there for 16 days. Like, we don't know if he held on to these women, you know, for a certain period of time. We do know that he kept their cell phones and that he made taunting phone calls, just like our blackjack dealer said, taunting phone calls to the sisters of the victims from the victims' own phones, saying, you know what I did to your sister? You're never going to see her again. You know, horrible things.
Horrible. And here's the thing. He managed to convince them most of them to leave their cell phones behind and just come out because he was going to give them so much money, you know. And if you're a drug addict or you just need money to survive, you're going to break your own rules.
Well, that was the fourth one, Amber Costello, who he apparently had a little ruse with the day before he went to her house. And then they played a little trick on him and they had one of her friends come out, pretend to be a jealous boyfriend and scared him away and kept his money. And then he called her the next day and said, I'll give you $1,500 for the night. Leave your phone at home. I want you for the whole night. And her roommate, who turned out to be the witness, who gave Heuermann's description of his physicality and of the vehicle back in 2010, by the way, when she went missing, who was the last person to see her alive that got buried in a file somewhere, told her to leave her cell phone home. And she did.
And so they think that he did that with the other girls. And the ones who did not leave their cell phones behind, well, he tortured their family. And
right. Two of them, he had their phones, right? And then I think the other two, I don't know. I don't know about Maureen Brainerd Barnes, if she had a phone with her or not.
Well, with Amber, she sticks in my head because what she must have suffered, because he obviously probably tortured them all, but I can't even imagine what he did to her because she pissed him off.
Yeah, the anger, right?
Yeah, it's just crazy. I'm like, I cannot even imagine why there's such evilness in this world. I just can't. It's just
I can't
so
either.
hard to grasp.
You know, and is it like, thank you, Nancy Furman, for the $1.99 super chat. You're rocking this week and keep it up. Thank you so much. And Teresa, thank you for the super sticker for $4. Thank you so much. You know, is it childhood trauma? Is it that? And here's another similarity that now we're totally off topic, but, and we are already an hour and 47 minutes in, but I just can't stop talking. If you guys want to go, you can go, but we're Tina, Lucille and I are having a little chat. His father dies when he's 11 years old, right? So he's the older brother. He becomes like the man of the house at 11 years old, right? Who knows what kind of like weirdness happened? This whole thing with, Brian, not Koberger, Brian Laundrie's mother. Do you know about that letter that she wrote to him?
Yes.
That really creepy letter where it was almost like she was talking to him as if he was like her spouse.
Right.
And there's a name for this, and I read about it. I can't think of it right now because it's a different case, so I wasn't focused on this tonight. But there's a name for that sort of dynamic that happens when, like, the mother, you know, substitutes the son for her husband in a weird sort of way.
The Oedipus Rex complex.
Yes, something similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super creepy. And like, who knows what happened to him in his childhood? I may read stuff about him. You know, being bullied and stuff in school. And like, look, not all kids that are bullied turn out to be serial killers and school shooters, but the majority of them seem to have that in their background.
And then you have his brother. See, at first I thought it was just him and his brother. So his brother has some issues, but it turns out that he has an older sister, another brother, possibly, I think another sister. There was I was shocked. I thought it was just him and his brother. But
there is a sister, I think, too. I heard there was a sister. Emotional incest. Yes, I think that's what it's called. Yes, correct. Thank you, Lou Lamarago, for the $50 super sticker coming in. Thank you. Parental enmeshment, MK says. Yes. Yeah. I think, covert incest. Yep. There's a lot of names for it. But yeah, I think that, we could be onto something here.
Yeah, it's just craziness. It's just craziness. And hopefully it's not drug out for years and years and years and years. Hopefully there's a resolution sooner rather than later.
Yes, I think so. I know. I agree. Oblivious Benson. I have to tell you that I love that name because I am a huge Mariska Hargitay fan. So if you didn't see it, I'm going to put the link to StreamYard again in the chat at the bottom. Thank you, Lou. So if you want to come on, I'll take one more call. I know I said that Tina Lucille was the last call, but Oblivious Benson, if you want to come in, just turn your camera on, get your sound on, and we'll bring you in.
So, you were talking about, Karen Vergata.
Mm-hmm.
And that her family didn't report her missing. I guess I heard somewhere that her father did report her missing. And they had pictures going out or whatever. But back in the day, nobody paid attention. Nobody took it serious because she was an escort in Manhattan. So nobody took them serious.
I read that, Joey, I don't know what you're trying to say. They did not report her missing because she was a drug user, and it wasn't uncommon for her to, disappear for periods of time, and that there was no official report, but the family did hire a private investigator to try and find her. Right. And that's why they had the DNA swabs, because they did that. They gave it to the private investigator.
Right. I'm glad they identified her, and I hope that it's true that they identified 3 more.
I hope so too.
I hope that it is the baby and Peaches.
I hope so. I mean, somebody's got to recognize that tattoo.
Well, somebody did recognize that tattoo.
I think the tattoo artist, right? But not a family member. You would think that maybe a family member would.
The tattoo artist, yeah, he didn't know her name or anything, just her approximate age. And they did do genealogical tracing, and they did find someone down south who had passed on that may be connected to her. So hopefully they were able to get past
I hope so.
And also with Tina Foglia's case, they do have DNA. They do have male DNA that they found on her or on the garbage bag. And they've been since 2017.
She was in a garbage bag too?
Yes.
So Karen Vergata's legs were in a garbage bag too.
Right. So she was in multiple garbage bags, and I guess the highway cleaners or whatever found her. But they do have DNA, and they have been working since 2017 to do the familial DNA trace. So I don't know what's going on with that. That's 6 years ago. So
wow.
I hope that they are able to trace that to someone.
I hope so too. I'm going to do, I'm going to fall into a rabbit hole on that one next. Yeah. That's going to be my next rabbit hole.
I would look into that. Her name is on the gilgocase.com website.
Oh, it is. Okay, good.
So, and
okay. Oh yeah, Joey, this is what he's trying to say. I may have found 3 victims from California in 91. 3 sex workers were found dismembered, put in burlap bags, and dumped in the Oak estuary. I did, I saw your comment on this on another show that we were doing, or you put a comment, or you were in the chat, and I did try and do a deeper dive into this. And yes, you're correct, but it has a different name. It's not the Oak estuary. I did find it, but I couldn't find a lot of information about it. So if you want to email me, email me. My email is in the description channel. You just have to click on the thing that you're not a robot. Oblivious Benson, I would love to let you in, but I can't see your camera on.
Oh, she must have a MacBook.
Oh, maybe.
The way I did it, I had to go into my settings, unclick Google Chrome, re-click it, reset my, it's a thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I was able to get it going.
Okay. It was stated by the commissioner. Wait a second, Richie. It was stated by the commissioner. The mattress was in the vault. Was that said separately then? Because, DA Tierney kept denying it and deny till you die. That's what he was doing. He was denying it. He wouldn't even address it. So, yeah, that's interesting. Then people were commenting after I made that comment on another show. They said, no, there was a police officer that said that it was too small. You couldn't even turn her. I don't know, 279 guns in it and a lot of clutter.
Yeah. I heard that he said something to the effect that you could fit in there even with the guns.
Yeah, like there was room for maybe a mattress or something.
And also, somebody asked him if they found any human remains, and he quickly said no.
Yep.
Then he kind of backtracked a little.
He said, but there's things that fibers and things and hair and, it all has to be tested. It's going to be a while. And, so because I think the Daily Mail reported they found burned bones in the backyard. There was like an overhead drone shot. And then, it could have been pieces of bones or something. Like he never really did come clean or, he does a lot of backpedaling. He does a lot of he'll say something and go, blah, 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 blah. And, we did a comparison the other day. All these shows kind of blend together, but I think it was the one that I did where I had some footage of Tierney, the DA, and some footage of Michael Brown. And I said, this is going to be a very interesting trial, but Tierney doesn't really inspire confidence the way that Brown does, which makes it kind of interesting. And we'll see. All right. I'm going to let Oblivious Benson, I'm getting all my names mixed up, in for the last call because we are almost at 2 hours, you guys. This time flew like we were having so much fun. Tina Lucille, thank you so much. I am so pleased to meet you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for covering this, and I love your channel.
Oh, thank you so much. I love you too. All righty. Bye. All right. Okay. Is it Ms. Benson?
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, your audio is excellent.
Okay, awesome, because this is a new headset and I'm on my work computer. I'm so sorry I can't use mic, but I just, first of all, I love your channel. I love hearing lawyers' perspectives.
Thank you.
And I just think you're doing such a good job and you're not really allowing anybody who is being inconsiderate or mean, to spread, I guess, misinformation. I really appreciate that.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I put my little theories out there, but I'm not trying to spread information. I'm just saying, what if?
Yeah, exactly. So the reason I wanted to come on, I have kind of a 3-parter, but I want to keep it short because I know you're running short on time. But one thing is, so I have been working on missing persons cases using data analysis and open source intelligence for about a decade now, but in Texas and also Florida. And I have a couple of officers that I work with to kind of field them information. And it's resulted in a couple of search warrants, but nothing too big. But I found that, and they're all cold cases. I just want to point that out. But one of the things that I think is very interesting is the amount of information online right now. And that has always been online, really, involving early cold cases, like from pre-internet. Because in the early 90s, we had ARPANET, which was reserved mainly for military and a couple of, I guess you could say, hackers, people who like to delve out into other areas of the internet. And I think it's very fascinating the amount of information for this case that is available or was available that can still be accessed. And one of those things that I'm just curious, I'm sure they have, I'm not saying the police overlooked this in any way, but, and the FBI especially, they're very thorough, but there's a couple of things that I do wonder if they're aware of. And it's because of the information involving the truck and his avalanche, that information from the roommate, because that kind of dragged on for so long, it makes me wonder and think maybe they don't know about some information that's available. And that's this. So the roommate of the Amber Costello, she had two of them. She had the boyfriend and the roommate who were running this scam on people. And when I heard about this, when it first came out, it was a few years ago. He did a YouTube interview, and this is not the redheaded one. It's the skinnier guy. And he had gone to rehab the day after, I believe, she went missing, or maybe the day of. So he did several interviews in the past talking about the avalanche, talking about this big guy who they'd ran the scam on. And they did the whole, like, I'm coming in to see my girlfriend. Oh my God, what are you doing with my girlfriend? I'm going to beat you up. And then the guys run away. And they've been doing this for quite some time, right?
Yeah.
So my first thought was to immediately talk to some sex workers that I know that I've interviewed for other cases and ask them what they thought about it. And one of the things I noticed he brought up in the interview was that one of the reasons they stopped running that scam, and he said this a few times, is because somebody was going on escort review sites and outing them. They were going on and they were warning other patrons or Johns, if you will, that, hey, you know, there is a girl that is running the scam with these two guys, so everyone be aware. And what I found interesting is some of the sex workers I've talked to about other cases told me that some of the creepiest people that they've had to deal with, both on the East Coast and the West Coast, namely like San Francisco and New York, that they have books that they all use, the escorts. There's one called Pink Book that was mainly West Coast, and Black Book. And what they are these other forums where the escorts can review the Johns, but it's like privately. And the other websites where the Johns review the escorts, you have to pay to have a membership, but it's public. And I spoke with one of them about this, and she told me, she said, you know, if he was, and again, I just asked for her opinion because she's been in contact with some really creepy people. She's told me about Johns that have, like, they'll get you very cold. They'll make you stand in a freezer, and then they'll lay you down on the bed and tell you not to move and pretend to play dead.
Oh, like
and
necrophilia.
So, yeah. And she said that's a huge fetish. And so the girls have warning words for this. Like, they have specific lingo that they use to let each other know. Like, they'll give them nicknames, and they'll say, dead girl guy looks like this. This is his phone number. He uses a burner phone. Like, they're very, very specific, and they will send it out onto this website, and other sex workers can see it, and they know to look out for him. Now, back in the early 90s,
and we thought an Uber rating was important, right?
Oh, yeah. It is very, oddly enough, it is very much like Uber, but ahead of its time, because they've been doing this since, well, I should say the late 90s to now. But in the early 2000s was when she was active doing this kind of work. And she would explain to me how there's a lot of guys with different fetishes that are very similar to some crimes that were occurring in the area. So when this case popped up, I brought it up to her and I said, you know, is there any way to access these old books for the East Coast girls? And what's interesting is there is, but the FBI actually, when they took down back pages, they took down a lot of the Google accounts for girls that were doing this kind of work, which included girls who had saved those phone numbers, saved this information for the future so they could know who to avoid. And now they can no longer access their accounts and see these online digital archived literal, like, Rolodexes. I'm old, I just showed my age, but literal Rolodexes of, like, people with a description of what they did, how they hurt the girl, where they picked them up. And because of that, she has no access to it. But she did tell me, you know, go check out the old forums before Escort Alligator. And there were some called, like, USA Sex Network. There were some that truckers used. And what's interesting is, so my work I do is all about data archiving and trying to find old caches of data. And so I used Wayback Machine thinking, it's simple, it's easy, but it works.
Explain just to the viewers who don't know what Wayback is. Tell them what Wayback is, because it's so interesting.
So Wayback, a lot of people think that the archive is ran by basically anytime you take a screenshot of a page on the internet, it goes somewhere and it goes to you, right? And you can save it, you can edit it, you can copy paste it. But what's interesting is someone created an algorithm a long time ago, a code that every time you take a screenshot of a page, it not only logs it on your server in your database, your phone or computer, but it also logs it on Wayback Machine. And not only does it log all screenshots, it logs all downloads of profiles. It logs, it uses a web crawler code, which is a code that randomly scrolls the internet. And if there's high traffic on a site, it will save that page as it was in real time. So 10 years later, you can type in that exact URL and you can see exactly what it looked like 10 years ago. And this includes forums, chat networks, anything that's not encrypted. So Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that might not pop up. But these forums back then, they were not encrypted. They were, if anything, ran off servers very similar to GeoCities and AngelFire. So basically what it is you can type in any URL, and if somebody ever took a picture of it online or saved the information, downloaded it, uploaded it, or went into the inspection tab, and because I don't know if you know this, but people, you can just click on inspect. You can go into the settings and you can type in and change the code for that page, and it will physically change that page to look like how you want. So you can change the text of a news article. You can change the title of a news article. And this is how a lot of people have gotten away with misinformation today, especially in politics. They'll say, look what this site is doing, or look what this site is doing. They're sharing the smut. And then they'll go change that little bit of code. And instead of saying, just an example, like instead of saying, Biden or Trump or someone did this, they can make it say Biden and Trump did this. And then what you see when you click on that URL is what they've just created. Wow. And it's really like a false page. So what Wayback,
it's like the deep fakes that they're doing now with AI and video.
It is literally a deep fake, but it's a temporary deep fake. And when you pass that same URL, you'll notice it's a little different than the original one. Well, most people don't notice that, like the extra dot or the extra one. And what's interesting is with these old escort sites, and with any site that's been taken down, it's really complicated to do that. It's almost impossible. So anything that you see on Wayback Machine that is no longer up can't really be manipulated in the future. So we just kind of have to trust it, because data doesn't lie. It has no purpose. It's not a person. It has no feeling, Mm-hmm. So my first thought was, let's go back and look at some of these review sites, because Rex, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, he reminds me a lot of a couple of different people that are newsworthy. I know everybody keeps saying BTK. I think he's very similar to Ed Kemper. And I think that because, first of all, he loves the hell out of his mom. Like, we know that based on like a lot of reporting and stuff, but he also does such horrible things to women who are sex workers. Now, Ed Kemper focused on his mom's students out of jealousy, and he loved his mom, but he hated her at the same time. Mm-hmm. So part of me wonders if he has some potential underlying mother issues he refuses to admit, but because of his size and his need to be authoritative and to be ominous and to hover over people, that's something that Kemper also desired. And he could never hack it as a cop, but he hung out with cops. And he's very, he considers himself intelligent. He's definitely a histrionic narcissist, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But there's just so many things about him that to me scream Ed. And one thing about Ed is, he loved audiobooks. And you look at BTK, if we're going to compare him, he used the internet in a way that other serial killers hadn't yet. Mm-hmm. And he thought a floppy disk was infallible, which is insane to me. But if he can be, and if Ed himself can be considered quote unquote smart, they still got caught. They did something stupid. They're not perfect. And when I look at his execution, Rex's, of these crimes, assuming he did them, it makes me think he had to gab about it. There's no way he kept quiet about this.
Right.
Who's he going to brag to? And then it hit me, he could be in these forums. And when you go back and you watch the roommates' interviews, he frequently talks about this guy. He keeps bringing him up, how he's big, how he's towering, how he kept bothering her and saying, like, you owe me and stuff like that. Like, how are you going to make up this credit to me?
Right, right.
And I found it interesting. So I started going back and I found a couple of old forums that some are actually still up and operative. And if you go to the last page, it'll take you to the first day these forums were opened and posted on. And then there's some that are down that you have to go through Wayback Machine. And if you look at them, there is definitely a couple of different guys on there that will, they openly warn. They say, you know, there's a sex worker that is, you know, taking John's money and pretending this guy's her boy. Like, they literally describe these women, and then you go look at these women and they look very similar to the descriptions. And you see a pattern of this in other cities. Like, I don't want to be too open about where I am right now, just out of safety. I'm also a crime victim who was almost kidnapped. So that kind of fuels me into finding some of these people. And when I went and looked into others all across the US, I was like, let's focus on the places he's been. You definitely see a pattern of Johns that make each other aware. They warn each other simultaneously. And this is a super weird part that is even hard for me to comprehend. There are Johns that are very protective over the girls. And I've spoke to the sex workers about this that I've spoken with on other cases. And they've told me, they said one of the reasons why some of these sites stay up is because they are being trolled by the police. Like, the police are watching them. Another thing is they want the Johns to protect them. There are some that will literally, if they find out you beat up a girl, they will go find you. Like, other Johns will go find this John and be like, you ruined this girl that we love. Like, it's strange, but they're very protective. Simultaneously, some are very hateful. And you can just go through these forums and read the comments. Now, what sucks is you have to start an account, and now you have this account on a weird sex site, you know? And it made me go, well, Rex was careful, right? Like, he used burner phones. So, and yes, I just saw someone said there's a rating group. Yes, they rate them. They will rate them on the activity, on how they look. They will say some very disturbing things like, you know, she's been beat up a few times, but she's still good to go. Like, stuff like that. They'll literally say, like,
oh my God,
you know, she's fatter than she was last time. They'll weight shame. It's very strange. But then other ones will say, like, you know, she's had a really hard life. I didn't even make her do anything for me. I just gave her money and took her out. Please protect her. She looks very young, but she's 21, and her ex-boy, like, it's so strange. Some of them will want to know about their lives. And I decided, let's look at Rex's old, they gave some aliases, you know, like, he goes by this on this burner phone, this on this. There are so many screen names on there that could potentially link to so many different people that target sex workers. And it makes me wonder, if the police are trolling this, how did they not see this back then? Were they on there actually? And do they currently know about this? And as far as, like, did I find any specifically from Rex? I can't say that because I haven't ran the IPs yet, but I found some suspicious ones. And if I can connect them to his IP, I would absolutely turn it in. And it's very easy also to connect IP addresses. People don't realize that either. Like, there's a website called Social Catfish that I think is going to be the next Wayback Machine. And I'm probably blowing up their spot right now, just telling you this, but they literally archive from Truth Seeker, white pages, which has a contract with the government, which goes by your post office box, your marriage and birth records. They also have contracts with, like, Ancestry, Spokio, like, every single site you can use to look someone up. Social Catfish has archived it all, and they take the IP addresses and they log them. And let's say you go to your friend's house and you use their internet, their Wi-Fi on your phone. your phone number is now going to pop up as a potential phone number that belongs to them in this.
Wow.
So if you go under Rex, you're going to see all kinds of IP addresses. You're going to see all kinds of different names. You're going to see so many different phone numbers. And I found it weird that they kept stressing this burner account was so difficult to find, but you can literally find these burner numbers attached to him on various websites. Like, it's very easy publicly. And it's very strange to me how they keep saying it was buried. This information was buried. I Googled it in 2 seconds. I found 4 YouTube videos with the ex-roommate going, it's this guy. He was this big. This is his car. From back then to now, you go look up on people search sites. We didn't have his name before, so obviously impossible to do.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we have it, you can go look and you can see, like, this guy had a pretty good internet trail. Like, he wasn't as smart as he thinks he is. And even if you use a burner, even if it's a flip phone, they can still log on to the internet. And it makes me wonder if he used any of these burner phones, which I personally think he did, to review these escorts. Because some of the shit that, oh, pardon my language, some of the stuff that they talk about in these forums, you read it and you go, how is this person not in jail? You know what I mean? Like, it's very shocking. And there's multiple different ones. But it makes me wonder if there's any on the older sites that link up to some of the similar language that he's used. Because that's another thing. People don't really change their language patterns unless they're trying to hide something. When they talk more, you hear more patterns in, like, the way they say words. And if you go through his interviews and you watch him talking about architecture, this is the third thing I wanted to bring up. And this, I have, like, I'm creeped out just bringing it up. I literally have goosebumps, and I never get this way about anything. But when he brought up the hammer, my first thought was Staten Island Jane Doe.
Wait, was Staten Island what? I didn't hear what you said.
Staten Island Jane Doe.
Yeah.
Who they recently identified her, said she had a daughter, couldn't find the daughter. But what's interesting is she was on Staten Island. She was lit on fire and still on fire, like still steaming when the cops found her. She was beaten with a hammer. It was a construction worker's ball peen hammer. It had the initial or the word Lloyd L carved into it, but it was under her body. She was handcuffed and she'd been beaten and strangled. And she'd been doused with a flammable liquid and then lit on fire. And she had a scorpion tattoo. For many years, they couldn't figure out who she was. They finally figured her out. This person didn't steal anything. There were a pack of cigarettes, I believe, left behind. The hammer underneath her is shocking to me. It makes me think that that was put there on purpose to mislead. But she was definitely bludgeoned, definitely strangled. It was bold and it was very juvenile. Like, to me, the person who did that crime had to be, like, under 40, in my opinion, because they made so many stupid mistakes.
And what year did this happen?
1990, I believe, or 92. I need to double check on that. But they recently ID'd her. And I found it so interesting that he kept bringing up this hammer. And I also found it interesting that it was right after she was identified. It seems to me like he started making a lot of mistakes. He started getting trailed by the cops, stuff like that. They haven't made any connection to these two, but it just, the way he says the type of hammer that he likes to use made me immediately think of her. Because when you look up, I've looked up every hammer homicide and assault in New York for the last 30 years when I was looking into her case. There's about 27. And out of those 27, none of them fit that MO. And it's just strange to me because she was solo. He would have been younger then.
1991 says Murder Inc.
Yeah, 1991. It makes me wonder if there's any connection there. I did an extensive rundown on her case on Reddit a while back, and a New York cop came on and ended up talking to me and privately and on Reddit about this case. And he was bringing up things to me in our private chat that when I see Rex's descriptions now, it makes me think, wow, that cop was spot on, but he deleted his account. So I can't, like, you know, get a hold of him. And it makes me wonder, like, how many people out there are making correlations between his speech patterns, the methods he's bragged about. I know he wasn't talking about killing, but there's subtleties in what he's saying.
And he always says 10 victims. He says the Gilgo Beach murderer killed 10 people on Long Island. He said that several times to several people. And I think you're right. I think that they choose their words very carefully. I
do think that the burlap thing is interesting because part of me always wants to debunk someone first. If I can't debunk them at all, like if I was a defense attorney, I'm not, but that's why I love watching, especially defense attorneys too, when they take on stuff like this, like how are you going to explain that out? And one of the things I found interesting is like, okay, they found Ace's hair, right? Well, there's an interview where they talk about how the police were, and this is an interview with a detective who's talking about how the police were actually on the trail of a guy who lived on Rex's street, whose initials matched the belt, HM, and he was an ex-Suffolk, I believe, police officer or NYPD.
I think they're saying those initials were his grandfather's.
Yeah, exactly. And when that came out, it's like,
right.
Oh, well, that makes sense now. But part of me wondered, like, why did they hone in on an ex-cop? Because cops love other cops, at least in my opinion. They tend to like protect each other. And it seems so weird to me that they invested so much into this. They must actually think that guy did something. And I'm not saying he did or not, but I found it fascinating that the guy lives, they said, on Rex's street. And it's like, if that's so, and he's got all this gardening stuff out in his yard, what are the chances a neighbor snuck over and stole the burlap bags and did it? You know, and if it's his wife's gardening stuff, that's good. But then again, I can't debunk that based on that, just because look at her old roommate, how he's talking about this big towering guy was the last guy to see her.
Right. And that got buried in the file because let's face it, they dropped the ball because James Burke, I mean, we can get into that's a whole other show. You know, the police commissioner was involved in some stuff and and you know, he beat up a suspect and there was a whole mess.
Yeah, and Chris Loeb's girlfriend or wife.
Yeah, she's all over TikTok. Have you seen her? Because I would like to. I was thinking about maybe reaching out to them.
I think you should. I did reach out to her a while back and asked her because you'll notice in his statements he said that Burke had some questionable things in the bag, and he said kiddie porn and porn with that was a snuff film. But then when she's on TikTok, she's saying it was little boys and not a snuff film. And so
that's like a rabbit hole we could fall into on like another 3-hour show.
Yeah, it's like a flip flop. And I'm just curious from him exactly what he like, okay, what was in there and how do you know? Did you watch it? Like I'm very confused about why that would change.
I don't know. That's something we could get into a whole other time. We got we're into this for 2 hours and 20 minutes and there's still almost 1,000 people in the chat. So wow, you guys are hardcore. You are in it for the long haul. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't done it already. And give us a like and a comment and a subscribe and hit that bell. I would love to keep in touch with you. I gotta cut this short because we so if you would please email me, you can find my email in the description, the channel description. And you could come in and do a whole show with me.
I
don't
would
know if you're comfortable about being on camera or not. Are you civilian? Are you law enforcement or are you civilian?
So this is so silly. I'm a stand-up comedian.
Oh, no, that's not silly. I'm an actress.
Oh, great.
In fact, Bill from Police Off the Cuff, we met in acting class and he was also a stand-up comedian at the time.
Oh, I love him. And I can't remember his name, Duty Ron. I love Duty Ron.
Yep.
But yeah, I do stand up, but I was a criminology student. I've worked in computers for about 30 years, a lot of archival, and my old roommate has been missing for over a decade. So combined with me getting attacked and almost kidnapped made me get heavy into trying to use online skills to help. And then I started going to school for criminology, and I just have been very invested in trying to use data that a lot of people might, because so many people want to come in and speculate and tear apart the families and cause problems. But if I can give a new avenue to people to look at other things, not to keep them busy, but to actually weed out information that you would literally need thousands of people looking at to find something, a needle in a haystack. I would encourage everybody, utilize the Wayback Machine. Go back and look at old escort forums. Go back and scroll, get an account if you have to, use a VPN so your wife or her husband doesn't find. And if they find, be like, let's search together and just look through, look and read these reviews. There's one, I think it's called USA Sex Network or something. That one was free. You're going to see people with horrible screen names. They're going to say horrible stuff, but it's interesting when you go through and you find the things they're saying about a specific location at a specific time when an escort or a sex worker went missing. Start logging those. Keep track of them. If you see something, say something. There are so many posts on there that it would take me myself years to find something that I think would be of actual evidentiary value, because I like to be certain. But if you do find something, even if you're not certain, if it looks like something that could have been Rex, also watch his old interview. If he says a word wrong and then he types something wrong, you know, if like the
patterns.
Zodiac
You're looking for patterns.
Yeah. Remember Zodiac wrote those letters and he would misspell so many words. The Howard Stern call, I just saw that. That serial killer, I do believe.
Howard Stern?
No. Howard Stern had a serial killer call in and say he was from Louisiana in the 90s. And he described himself in a way where they were certain that it was this guy who was a potential cop, and the way he was killing the women. And Howard actually did a really good job of keeping this guy on the line and getting information. And it was the closest thing to like a Kepler Mindhunter style profiling interview I've seen that wasn't on, you know, on a channel for it or specifically on a show. Like Howard did a great job of, he was being very endearing, and he was almost what's the word when you're like almost hitting on someone.
Wait, was this like a Baba Booey thing, or this was really
a serial killer? It was really a serial killer, and he was charming him. He was basically reversing the charm on the guy. Got a lot of information. The FBI contacted him. Howard gave them everything he had. He even offered to like call this guy again. Well, years later, 2 different serial killers were caught that had almost the exact same like MO, signature, like all sorts of things that was said in this call. And it's called A Serial Killer Calling, I believe, is the Howard Stern episode. But that episode, that amped up a lot of web sleuths. Like it made them go, oh my God, like this guy could be, it was crazy. And one of the killers was killing sex workers. He was a white guy who had a wife. I can't think of his name right now, but he's pretty famous for it. He killed a lot of them. But it's fascinating because that guy, you know, you listen to his accent and you can kind of tell where he's from, stuff like that. And he says he's from the South and you can kind of hear it. And I think that these are important little subtleties people can catch. You can listen to Rex's interviews. If he says, some people say nuclear instead of nuclear.
Right.
That's an example of, you know, you see someone say a specific word wrong. If you see that in a chat or in a review, I think that's something important to mark. And also you can take that screen name from that review, you can run it through several sites, get the IP address and connect it to the real person. And you can do this publicly as anyone. Like if you got $2 on a credit card, I can find out everything about you. It's terrifying. Yeah, it's terrifying. But
it's scary. Is there any way to scrub that stuff?
There is.
Hire somebody to scrub it for you? Can you scrub me?
100% there is. There, you know, it's so funny. I don't know the exact name of it, but there's a couple of like these podcasts that go out and they advertise this one service where it's like, get all your stuff off the internet. That one is, I can't remember the name, but it actually is really good at it because I've had 2 people that were crime victims who had their information up and they were scared when the dude got out, they were going to find them. So I recommended that service after reading a bunch about it and realizing that they don't share your data. They actually wipe it. And they have had no issues. Like it'll get taken off of white pages. Some of them you have to go individually though. Like if you go to Spokio, Radaris, Truth Seeker, you have to go to each one. You have to email them. and then you have to literally say, take me off and prove it's you. But I'm telling you, it's worth it. Just do it. If you're creeped out, if you have a creepy ex, if the credit card people are after you, student loans, just do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we could do a whole, you're teaching all of us armchair detectives how to hone our skills a little bit. But yeah, so email me because we want to do a whole other show on this. I can tell everybody in the chat wants to see you do a whole entire show.
I will. And you have a great day. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. And I will, please reach out to me because I definitely want to keep in touch and I definitely want to do this sooner rather than later. I mean, let's do it.
I will, Melanie. You're the
because
best.
I love helping people too. And you know, the fact that you're out there looking for missing people really like on your own time and you're not even being paid for this just because it's something that you feel called to do. I love that.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we can make some good things happen on the internet instead of all of these horrible things that we see happening on the internet, let's try and use this platform to do some good, you know, and to help people instead of ruining people, which is what we see every single day.
And I love that you're a lawyer because you can kind of cut people off in advance and be like, nope, what you're doing is slander. So I think that's very important. But thank you so much. I love your channel. You're the best. Keep going.
Thank you so much. You added so much to this show. You kept over 900 people on this show for 2.5 hours. So thank you for coming. Thank you for waiting. And thank you to everyone who is in the chat. Thank you to Stephanie for the super chat of $19.99. That is so sweet. Thank you so much. All right, Olivia Benson. Oh, she hung up on me. Okay. Rihanna says, would you like to do an interview with Megan Waterman's sister? Yes, 100% I would. Do you know her? Can you get her for me? Because I would love to talk to her. I have a lot of things to say. You know, one thing that I do and that I know that Duty Ron does and Bill too is we really pay respect to the victims because this case is all about the victims. And tonight's about Karen. So, you know, I'm really glad that they were able to identify her. I'm really glad that her family will have some closure. And, you know, this is also for the families of Megan Waterman and Amber Costello and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. And I'm forgetting one right now. Megan Waterman, I said. Melissa Barthelemy is number 4. I was in court and I saw the families sitting in the jury box and it breaks my heart. But prayers to all the victims and their families. And we hope there's another indictment coming down the pike soon. This is going to be a very, very long road to justice, but we're here for it. I'm here for it. I hope you guys are here for it. Thank you to all my mods for keeping the chat classy. And thank you to everyone who hung on here for over 2.5 hours. I had no idea that we were going to go this long. I had no idea that so many interesting people would come into our town hall. And thank you to everyone who did, and our blackjack dealer who told us what it was like to spend 8 hours with Rex Heuermann at a blackjack table at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut 20 years ago. So if you didn't see that, rewind and watch it again. I am going to see you guys real soon. If you have any ideas for things that you'd like to see, please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment because it helps the YouTube algorithm. And I'm going to hook up with Oblivious Benson and we're going to come back and do something for you. So stay tuned for that. All right, everybody. Have a great night and a great rest of your weekend. Bye.